Emmy showed them the back door and the path up the fields to the 10-acre pasture. They walked and stumbled as in a dream, and did not dare look back till they were far away on the high ground. They were glad of the path, for they could not have gone the front way by that will. It was bad enough passing through the glowing barn sheds and those shining orchard trees with the gnarled, fiendish contours. But thank heaven the branches did their worst twisting high up. The moon went under some very black clouds as they crossed the rustic bridge over Chapman's Brook and was blind groping from there to the open meadows. When they looked back toward the valley and the distant gardener place at the bottom, they saw a fearsome sight. All the farm was shining with the hideous unknown blend of color, trees, buildings, even such grass and herbage as had not been wholly changed to lethal gray brittleness. The boughs were all training skyward, tipped with tongues of foul flame, and the lambent tricklings of the same monstrous fire were creeping about the ridge poles of the house, barns, and sheds. It was a scene from a vision of Fuseli. And all over the rest reigned that riot of luminous amorphousness, the alien, undimensioned rainbow of cryptic poison from the well, seething, feeling, lapping, reaching, scintillating, straining, and malignly bubbling in its cosmic and unrecognizable chromaticism. Then, without a warning, this hideous thing shot up vertically up toward the sky like a rocket or a meteor, leaving behind no trail or disappearing through a round and curiously regular hole in the clouds before any man can gasp or cry out. No watcher can ever forget that sight. And Amy stared blankly at the stars of Cygnus, Deneb twinkling above the others, and where the unknown color had melted into the Milky Way. But his gaze was next moment called swiftly to the earth by the crackling in the valley. It was just that. Only a wooden ripping or crackling, not an explosion, as so many others of the party vowed. Yet the outcome was the same, for in the one feverish kaleidoscopic instant, there burst up from that doomed and uncursed farm a gleaming, eruptive cataclysm of unnatural sparks and substance, blurring in glance of the very few who saw it, and sending forth to the zenith a bombarding cloudburst of such colored and fantastic fragments as our universe must needs disown. Through quickly reclosing vapors, they followed the great morbidity that had vanished, and in another second they had vanished too. Behind and below there was only a darkness to which the men dared not return, and all about the mounting wind, which seemed to sweep down in black gusts from interstellar space. It shrieked and howled and lashed the fields and disordered woods in a mad cosmic frenzy, till soon the trembling party realized it would be no use waiting for the moon to show what was left down there at Mayhew's. Too awed to even hint at theories, the 7 shaking men trudged back towards Arkham by the near north road. Amy was worse than his fellows and begged them to see him inside his own kitchen, instead of just keeping on straight to town. He did not wish to cross the nighted, wind-whipped woods alone on his home on the main road. For he had had an added shock that the others were spared, and was crushed forever with the brooding fear that he dare not even mention for many years to come. As the rest of the watchers on that contemptuous hill had stolidly set their faces toward the road, Amy looked back an instant at the shadowed valley of desolation so lately sheltering his ill-starred friend. And from that stricken, faraway spot, he had seen something feebly rise, only to sink down again upon the place from which the great shapeless horror had shot into the sky. It was just a color, but not any color of our earth and our heavens. And because Amy recognized that color, he knew that this last faint remnant must still lurk down there in the well. He's never been quite right since. Amy would never go near the place again. It is over half a century now since the horror happened, but he's never been there, and will be glad when the new reservoir plots it out. I shall be glad too, for I do not like the way the sunlight changed color around the mouth of that abandoned well I passed. I hope the water will always be very deep, but even so, I shall never drink it. I do not think I shall return, visit the Arkham country hereafter. 3 of the men who had been with Amy returned the next morning to see the ruins by daylight, but there was not any real ruins. Only the bricks of the chimney, the stones of the cellar, some mineral and metallic litter here and there. And the rim of the Fandis well. Save for Amy's dead horse, which they towed and buried, and the buggy which they shortly returned to him, everything had been ever living had gone. 5 eldritch acres of dusty gray desert remained, nor has anything ever grown there since. To this day it sprawls open in the sky like a great spot eaten by acid in the woods and fields, and the few who have ever dared glimpse it, in spite of its rural tales, have named it, quote-unquote, the Blasted Heath. The rural tales are queer. They might even be queerer than if city men and college chemists could be interested enough to analyze the water from a disused well. Chemists could be interested enough to analyze the water from it. Or the gray dust that no wind ever seems to disperse. Botanists too ought to study the stunted flora on the borders of that spot, for they might shed light on the country notion that the blight is spreading, little by little, perhaps an inch by a year. People say the color of the neighboring herbage is not quite right in spring, and that the wild things leave clear prints in the light winter snow. Snow never seems quite so heavy on the Blasted Heath as it is elsewhere. Horses, the very few that are left in this motor age, grow skittish in the Silent Valley, and hunters cannot depend on their dogs too near the splotch of grayish dust. They said the mental influences are very bad too. Numbers went queer in the years after Nahum's taking, and they always lacked the power to get away. Then, the stronger-minded folk all left the region, and only the foreigners try to live there in the crumbling old homesteads. They cannot stay, though, and one sometimes wonders what insights beyond their wild, weird stories of whispered magic have given them. Their dreams at night, they protest, are very horrible in that grotesque country, and they surely the very look of the dark realm was enough to stir a morbid fancy. No traveler has ever escaped the sense of strangeness in those deep ravines. And artists shiver as they paint thick woods whose mystery is as much of the spirit as of the eye. I myself am curious about the sensation I derived from my one lone walk before Annie told me this tale. When twilight came, I had vaguely wished some clouds would gather, For an odd timidity about the deep sky voids above had crept into my soul. Do not ask me for my opinion. I do not know. That is all. There was no one but Amy to question it, for Arkham people will not talk about the strange days. And all three professors who saw the aerial light and of its colored globe are dead. And there were those other globules depend upon that. One must have fed itself and escaped. And probably there was another which was too late. And no doubt it is still down the well. I know that there's something wrong with the sunlight I saw above that miasmal brink. The rustics say the blight creeps an inch a year, so perhaps there is some kind of growth or nourishment even now. But whatever demon hatchling is there, it must be tethered to something, or else it will quickly spread. Is it fastened to the roots of the trees that claw the air? One of the current Arkham tales is about fat oaks that shine and move as they ought to, not to at night. What it is, only God knows. In terms of matter, I suppose the thing Amy described would be called a gas, but this gas obeyed laws that are not of our cosmos. This was no fruit of such worlds and such suns shine on the telescopes and photographic plates of our observatories. This was no breath from the skies whose motions and dimensions our astronomers measure or deem too vast to measure. It was just a color out of space, a frightful messenger. Those unformed realms of infinity beyond all nature as we know it. From realms whose mere existence stuns the brain and numbs us with the black extra-cosmic gulfs it throws open before our frenzied eyes. I very much doubt if Amy consciously lied to me, but I did not think his tale was all a freak of madness as the townsfolk had forewarned. Something terrible came to the hills and valleys on that meteor, and something terrible, though I know not what in proportion, still remains. I shall be glad to see the water calm. Meanwhile, I hope nothing will happen to Annie. He saw so much of the thing, and its influence was so insidious. Why has he never been able to move away? How clearly he recalled those dying words of Nahum's, "Can't get away. Draws ye. You know something's up coming, but 'tain't no use." Annie's such a good old man. When the reservoir gang gets to work, I must write the chief engineer to keep a sharp watch on him. I would hate to think of him as the gray, twisted, brittle monstrosity which persists more and more in troubling my sleep.